World Aeternum is changing from a classless system where you can do everything to an archetype class system where you can still do everything. You're still able to use every weapon in the game and level every trade skill in the game, but Amazon has decided to make things easier for the first dozen hours or so of gameplay by giving people a labeled class where you are handed two weapons and, more importantly, a boost in three trade skills. Although this decision seems insignificant in the long term, and it is, I think this has some big impacts for the early game, and especially when we take into consideration fresh start servers. Let's take a deep dive real quick into each of the archetypes that is coming to New World, and we will discuss the weapons you get with each archetype, but more importantly, we will deep dive into the trade skills that come with each class and how you can use that to your advantage. It's gold. More gold. If you do it right. One point of clarification before we discuss the first archetype, Soldier. When it says you are given a boost in three trade skills for each archetype, this boost equates to 50 levels. A higher level in a trade skill means you have access to higher natural resources for mining or gathering, and higher recipes for refining, such as weaponsmithing or armoring. To give an example, let's dive into the first archetype, the Soldier, who starts with a sword and shield, a hatchet, and a boost in three trade skills: weaponsmithing, mining, and smelting. This boost means you will start the game at level 50 in weaponsmithing, mining, and smelting. For those who are new to New World, this doesn't mean much, but to anyone who has played the game before, you will understand this impact not only to your own gameplay, but to the economy, which is completely player run and dependent upon these trade skill levels. To level your mining skill to level 50, you need just under 13,000 experience. Under 45, you are mining iron and silver, silver at level 10, which gives you an average of 170 experience per node. You get about 105 from small nodes and around 237 for large nodes. That means by selecting Soldier, you are 76 nodes on average worth of experience ahead of other players. You are mining these nodes 109% faster. You have immediate access to gold nodes at level 45, and when partnered with smelting and weaponsmithing, if you chose the Soldier, you have access to create gear that sets you far ahead of other players, or you are able to list this gear on the market. To recap real quick on all of the archetypes so we can move on to the next, the Soldier begins the journey with a sword and shield, a hatchet, and level 50 in weaponsmithing, mining, and smelting. For reference, weaponsmithing is used at the forge to make melee weapons, and smelting is used at the smelter to refine ore. The occultist is the next class, and they begin with a fire staff, an ice gauntlet, and level 50 in jewel crafting, mining, and stone cutting. Jewel crafting is used at the outfitting station for amulets and rings, and stone cutting is used at the stone cutting table to make stone blocks, tuning orbs, gemstones, and rune glass. The destroyer begins with a warhammer great axe and level 50 in armoring, skinning, and leatherworking. Armoring is used at both the outfitting station and the forge to make armor, and especially important, bags. The leatherworking skill is used at the tannery to refine leather. The mystic begins with a void gauntlet, a life staff, at level 50 in arcana, harvesting, and weaving. Arcana is used at the arcane repository to make magical weapons and concoctions such as potions. Weaving is used at the loom to refine cloth. The ranger begins with a bow, a spear, and level 50 in engineering, logging, and wood cutting. Engineering is used at the workshop to make things such as ranged weapons, not including magical weapons, ammo, the very important tools, instruments, and furniture. The woodworking skill is used at the wood shop to refine wood. The sword bearer begins with a great sword, a blunderbuss, and he gets level 50 in cooking, fishing, and leatherworking, the short end of the stick. Cooking is used at the kitchen to cook. Leatherworking is used at the tannery to refine leather. Last but not least, the musketeer begins with a musket, a rapier, and level 50 in armoring, harvesting, and weaving. Armoring is used at the outfitting station and the forge to make armor and the oh so important bags, and weaving is used at the loom to refine cloth. All 7 archetypes start with different weapons and different trade skills, And I would argue that the weapons are actually not the thing that you should be paying attention to, even though I believe most people initially see the different archetypes as a way to get the different weapons. In the end, it is not worth it when you take into consideration how important your trade skills will be for the early game. After you play an hour, you should have received at least one of all of the different weapon types, or at least been able to visit the trade shop where you can buy what you want. And at that point, starting with said weapon is now useless. Maybe you got to play with it for an extra hour, which got a few levels higher, but by the time you hit the end of the game, level 65, or even middle of the game, level 30, you should either have that weapon maxed out or be pretty close to having it maxed out. And especially by the time you hit the end game, you will have had that weapon maxed out for a very long time. What is more important is getting a huge head start on people who are not level 50 for certain trade skills. While they run past the gold vein because it requires mining to be 45, you can stop and take that resource. If you're a soldier, you can take that back to a town and refine it into a gold ingot and sell it. I'm very curious to see how this new mechanic plays into the overall politics of the game as well, where clans are able to band together in the early game, select a wide range of archetypes that cover all areas of crafting, so they can combine their resources and inundate the shops with all possible weapons, armors, tools, bags, and resources anyone could use, and then they funnel those resources into controlling every possible city. A little point of clarification there is it requires a good chunk of gold to be the first clan to claim a city. I believe it's around 10,000. And then it requires a lot of gold to upkeep and upgrade that city. When you're talking about power struggles in the first few weeks of gameplay, being able to control the market is huge. And if there are a few clans who understand this concept and can do it on these fresh start servers, they can set the pace for a server for a very long time, almost as long as they want, which we did see these kind of things happening on some of the servers at the initial release. I think that about wraps up my thoughts on the archetypes, though. I think it's the single biggest change they have made in the game, and it will drastically change the future of the game. Not because how it affects the individual player, but instead the economy of the game. At least the economy for the first few weeks, when it is the most volatile, and when it can set certain clans ahead of others in controlling the map. I'll probably make some more in-depth guides on builds for each weapon type for each of the archetypes, or maybe a video on what things you should be doing to maximize gold for each trade skill. I will add as a final point that I will be selecting Musketeer to make bags or the Ranger to make tools. Bags and tools are very important in the early game when people are working their way up to max level. I chose bags for the initial release and was selling bags for about 3,000 gold within the first few days of release. I saw a lot of people doing the same with tools. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you felt this video was of value, I would greatly appreciate hitting the like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more New World videos.